And we are back. God, these statues. I tweeted about these things after noticing them in my last session, and that tweet was pretty popular. People, people had a lot of theories about these things. Some people think, or one person pointed out that it might be like Giga Queen, because she kind of takes that squat-legged pose at times. I'm not entirely sold that's what it is, but it's not a terrible theory. Interesting nonetheless. Alright, let's progress. Here's these goofers. Suit, plug boy. I want to go back to the city, but the way is blocked. I'm no country boy. Let me out of Cyber Field. That's a funny line. So this is meant to be like quote-unquote out in the country. It's a cyber field. Huh. Hence why it's so barren and green. It's the equivalent of the Fields of Hopes and Dreams from Chapter 1. I think that's what they're called. It is interesting that they both start in a field. I wonder if like every chapter will follow a similar baseline structure. Interesting if true. I mean, if you think about it, even Rousseau's Dark World, you start off on the cliffs, which is the equivalent of the fields. It's like a barren place. Then you get to the town portion, where all the NPCs are, and then you get to the castle, which is where the Dark Fountain is. In the Chapter 1, you start in the Field of Hopes and Dreams, you progress through some areas to get where there's more NPCs, until you eventually get to the tower, or sorry, the card castle, which is where the Dark Fountain is. And then in this chapter, we start in the Cyber Field, we progress to the Cyber City, where all the Darkness are, then we get to Queen's Mansion, where the Dark Fountain is. So, at least thus far, all of the Dark Worlds have followed a broadly similar structure. So that's kind of interesting. Cuisine is so unrefined out here in the memory sticks. Is that where this is supposed to be? We're in the memory sticks? Like, so the cyber field is created from memory sticks. Interesting. I think. I don't know if that's like worth analyzing. It's like, yeah, this place out here represents the memories of characters or something. I don't know. I can't see anything particularly interesting off the top of my head. I heard there's a rebel team resisting Queen. Yeah, they're right there. So far, all I found are overpriced bagels. Okay, yeah. They figured out it's the Sweet Cap and Cakes, but they're over here selling overpriced bagels. And this is the bandana plug boy, which some people theorize might be a reference to Jigglypuff in Smash Bros, which we know Toby Fox likes Smash Bros. Jigglypuff has an alt with a green bandana very similar to this. Personally, it reminds me more of Bandana D from Kirby, but that's just me. What else do you gotta say? Bagels, donuts. Why is it round dough is always so overpriced? That is an Undertale reference, like just straight up. I'm pretty sure, because like that was the whole shtick in Undertale. Like the scared donut guy in Undertale who bought a donut from Muffet, like the donut cost like a bajillion gold. The hole is expensive. And that's like a multi-layered joke. So the obvious joke is that you know, taking out part of the donut shouldn't cost that much. So the idea that nothing is expensive is silly. However, it's also a reference to Chapter 1, where we throw money in a hole. I think that's a reference. And all of that, of course, is a callback to Undertale. I think, if I'm getting all my references straight. It's still pretty funny. And I don't quite recall, like, because I think there's, like, jelly donuts you can buy in Chapter 1, and I don't quite recall if those were the most expensive food item, but if so, then that's certainly a callback. And here's, I think, is this Cap'n? Yeah, this is Cap'n, this is KK. It appears to be some kind of force field. There's a lot of different kinds of force field, aren't there? This one's different from the others, though. The others are electrical themed, whereas this one is like the music note type thing that was used to attack us. Which kind of inclines me to think that the Sweet Cap and Cakes are responsible for this one, whereas the electric force fields are created by Queen. At least that's my theory. Especially makes sense because I think once these guys are gone, the force field's gone too. So, could be. Yo, Snicker. It's hard work being Queen's minion, ain't it? Why don't you take a break and grab a snack? Ultra seedy CD bagels, only $400 each. Ew, that sounds really gross. So there's CD bagels, which is really silly, because, you know, a CD is a round thing with a hole in the middle, so the bagels of this world are made from CDs. Don't buy. Huh? Come on, you can't survive off the air she breathes. Queen, believe me, I've tried. What? Is this the guy who has a crush on Queen? I don't quite recall. Oh, but yeah, so I was looking into the possible responses from him when you buy or try to buy CD bagels, because something that people don't realize is that there's so many different interactions you get depending on your inventory and when you try to buy things. So if you buy something successfully, he says something, and if you refuse to buy something, he says something. But if you attempt to buy something and your inventory is full, he says a unique thing. And if you attempt to buy something but it's too expensive and you don't have enough money, he says something also unique. So it's like, and that's true for most shopkeepers. So it's like there's so many like little bits of very niche dialogue that no one ever sees. So with Cap in here, I pulled up his dialogue in the code. If you actually buy it, he's like, pleasure doing business with you, Snicker, because, you know, he scammed you. If you have no room in your inventory, he says, hey, you don't have any room. What? Took too many bribes? Because, you know, we're a lackey of the Queens. If you try to buy it and you don't have enough money, he says, what? Too expensive? Well, too bad. You're not going to get a better deal anywhere else. And, of course, we already showed what happens when you refuse to buy. I'm just checking KK now. Oh wow, KK has even funnier dialogue. Want to buy a bagel? Only $80. KK, no, it's 400. 400. Got it. Want to buy 400 bagels? Only $80. If you buy 400 bagels, this happens. You are crushed under the weight of 400 bagels and defeated instantly. Not really. You just can't carry that many. That's a super silly meta joke that, like, that's not diegetic. It can't be diegetic. So that's just a pure meta joke. If you click don't buy, he says, that's okay, I haven't bought one either. And if you say buy one bagel, you paid $80 for a bagel. This is, I think, probably still overpriced. Can I have one too? You're selling them! But I digress. As for some of the other interactions, if you try to buy one and you can't afford it, he says, you can't afford it? Don't worry, this one's on me. And he gives you a free bagel. So that's pretty funny. And if you have no room in your inventory, he says, no room for a bagel? What about the hole? So yeah, that's pretty funny. However, that also brings us to... Oh, new dialogue from Lancer. Ho ho ho, that game looked fun! Let me be the stool next. Let's see. Then there is, of course, the newly acquired CD bagel. A bagel with a reflective inside. Makes music with each bite, plus 80 HP. Which is a pretty good healing item, actually. As for the interesting dialogue surrounding CD bagels, the shop text, when you can buy it in a shop, says, musical food with crunch. Yeah, depending on where you buy it in the game. Okay, yeah, no, actually $80 is the cheapest you can buy it for. You can buy it for $80, $100, $120, and $400 dark dollars, depending on where you're at. Okay, yeah. Flavor text. If you give the CD bagel to Susie, she says, it's got crunch. If you give it to Ralsei, he says, how elegant. And if you give it to Noelle, she says, "What a nice song." However, the reason that's kind of confusing is that whenever you eat a seedy bagel, it plays a little bit of music. And what kind of music it plays depends on who you give it to. I didn't actually realize this because I almost never, looked at these things in my playthroughs of Deltarune. So, one moment. Let me mute the music of the game for a second. And I'll probably put this on up in the video itself. I'll throw the audio clips on into the video, hopefully, if I remember. Okay, yeah. Very interesting. So, if you give it to Chris, it sounds very like it's like layered and almost mystical sounding. This do 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 do, and it sounds very much like it kind of reminds me of like maybe a sound a save file might make, or save point might make in like a different RPG. Interestingly, Noelle's follows a very similar kind of like the music of it is very similar. Like, how do I put this? It sounds different. It sounds like just a simpler, more do 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 do, and it's very simple and pleasant. But it basically sounds like a simpler version of the Chris music, which is interesting. Curiously, Ralsei, Ralsei's is easily the most complex. It sounds like you're just getting a brief snippet of a full orchestra before it fades out. And then with Susie, you just get a single grrr on an electric guitar. So I find that very interesting. The fact that Chris and Noelle have similarities is interesting, whereas the fact that Noelle's is really simple while Chris's is rather complex is also interesting. And the fact that the most complex version of them all is Ralsei's is the most interesting at all. If I were to fit this into any theories, I'd probably argue that Ralsei's is the most complex because he's both somehow part Azrael, but also a Darkner, but also wants to be Chris and Susie's friend, but doesn't want to control them. There's so many different complexities and nuances to Ralsei's character that, both from his origin to his personality, that I would argue that kind of informs his CD bagel being so elaborate. He's also a fanciful prince, so it makes sense to be this orchestra. Susie's is self-explanatory. Noelle and Chris, it's interesting that Noelle and Chris have the same musical sound. I mean, it's not the same, obviously. They're different, quite different. It's just that, it feels like they're playing the same melody, just with, slightly different tones and different levels of complexity. I mean, they are childhood friends, so they do have that going for them. They're both Lightners, they're both from the town. It's interesting. It could be implying that Noelle and Chris have more similarities than they let on. And I mean, if you think about it, Noelle is controlled by the player during Chapter 2, in the sense that we get to decide if she goes down the path of good or evil. So maybe that's kind of why it's similar, because in this chapter, she's kind of an echo of Chris. The path we choose for Chris kind of echoes into the path we choose for her. And the fact that hers is so simple, while Chris's is more complex, could be hinting at the fact that Chris has multiple souls, or the fact that Chris is possessed by the player, or it could be hinting at the fact that Noelle kind of buries different aspects of her personality to appear pleasant. Like she's putting on a facade. There's a lot of different options there. Very interesting. It's a lone door frame, but for some reason you can't see through it. The infamous teleport doors. Who made them? Where do they come from? Why do they look like Gaster's door? Why do they look like Sans' door? What's that all about? A lot of unanswered questions. Let's see, shift. More of these spinning things. Oh, by the way, I actually looked at this thing in the files to see what it's called. It's called, get this, a cyber tree. Tree, tree, which is very interesting because I don't know about you, but I've never seen a tree quite like this before. It also adds like a potential Noel element to this because, you know, what do you have on the top of a Christmas tree? A glowing thing, you know, like some sort of angel. Oh my god. Yeah, of course, you put an angel on top of a Christmas tree. The fact that the yellow soul is at the top of the tree in a world themed very heavily after Noel seems to affiliate the yellow soul with the angel. But which angel? Because Noel's referred to as an angel, but presumably her soul doesn't look like this. The angel from the prophecy is referred to as an angel, but it's represented by the Deltarune, not by a soul. And while Chris's soul does turn yellow at one point, it's not the way it always looks, and even whenever it is yellow, it's not oriented like this. This is more similar to how Frisk's soul is oriented. Could this be hinting that the angel is a human? Or an ascended human? That would, if you're not careful, you might kind of overlap the Roaring Knight with the angel. Because people who think Chris is the Roaring Knight would look at this and be like, aha, you know, this is perhaps proof of Chris creating Dark Fountains. But the angel isn't the one who creates Dark Fountains. The angel, it's the Roaring Knight that makes the fountains. And at no point has it been implied that the angel and the Roaring Knight are one and the same. And in the context of, you know, Undertale, the angel is a far more powerful being than a mere knight. So overlapping the two is probably not correct. So it's very strange to see a human soul, or perhaps a monster soul. I assumed it was human because it was yellow, but it's upside down like a monster soul. Could this be implying, and if this is at the top of a tree, presumably it's not the wrong way up, you know? So maybe this is implying that the angel's a monster. And if it's associated with the color yellow, maybe it's a monster who cared a great deal about justice. Maybe it was justice that motivates the angel to do whatever it does. Perhaps, because, you know, in Undertale, justice is pretty important, because, you know, the monsters want quote-unquote justice for themselves because they feel like they've been wronged by humanity. This is fascinating. Wow, this being called a tree totally changes so much about, like, what this is meant to represent. It also adds the possibility that the fact that this is the chapter where we use the Yellow Soul, and this is the chapter heavily associated with Noel, you could argue that Noel may be the angel? But here's the issue with that. Noel doesn't care that much about justice. The more we learn about her, the more we see that fairness and justice are not exactly high on Noel's priority list. And the reason I say that is because in the Spamton Sweepstakes, we get a flashback where Noel spies on Susie bullying Chris. And at no point during that does she intervene. She doesn't try to stop that. She doesn't. And more importantly, by the end of that story, her goal hasn't changed. She still wants to be with Susie. Seeing Susie act like that didn't change anything for her. And she's not like out trying to seek retribution or justice or anything. She's not reporting Susie. So it's like, point is, I don't think justice is high on Noel's priority list. So her being the, like, I don't know. I can't help but feel that, like, Noel being called an angel is a red herring. It's misleading. I feel like she's the angel on top of a Christmas tree, not the angel at the top of this plot, if that makes sense. In fact, I think that might be why specifically she's referred to as an angel, is because it's a Christmas-themed concept. Interesting. Wow. You know, I was worried I wouldn't be able to find any interesting lore to discuss in Chapter 2, but how wrong I was. Dancing demons. I think that's what these, like, images are called. Let me double check. It's just called a dance. Like, it's called a queen screen, and this is labeled the dance queen screen. Such fun. And here's my boy, the B tier of all B tier designs, the Hacker. Not much to discuss regarding the lore of the Hacker. I'm the Hacker. I'm going after the blue checks marks. Find 3 in the cyber field ahead, and I'll join your city. How does he know we have a city? You just look like the kind of folks who have a cool city. Yeah. Alright. The blue check marks, I think, is meant to be a Twitter reference, as you get blue check marks on Twitter. And also, Twitter is referenced multiple times throughout this chapter. There's a little blue bird character who features prominently. So I suspect that's by design. The checks marks almost feels like it's a reference to Chex Quest, which was a terrible Doom clone game, but that might be a stretch. But then again, it's a retro enough game that I could see Toby Fox being remembering it. According to Cyber, you found 0 blue check marks out of 3. 0. Not bad for a beginner. Your Chex Quest. God. You know, I'm very stupid. I should just read instead of theorizing. Yeah, okay. It's the neighbor's car is loud. Did you know that? Anyway, I should have just... Yeah, it's definitely a Chex Quest reference. Alright, I'm gonna speed up a little because the neighbor's being loud. Stupid kid. Wow, I didn't know you could dodge these. I mean, we don't want to dodge these. Tasks crossed your path, which is a reference to cats crossing your path. However, I think I've already discussed all the lore there is to be found with these guys, so I'll probably cut this battle out. Well, that's interesting. Does it only pop out right here? Wait. Okay, yeah. Oh, I see. I was confused. I thought there was 2 different task encounters, but those 2 tasks were both part of the same encounter. You opened the treasure chest. Inside was glow wrist. Glow wrist was added to your armors. And I do believe we've already gotten a glow wrist before. Yeah. Yeah. Nothing new there. Oh my god. A cat stuck in the window. It seems to be stuck. Rip Bozo. That's funny. Appears to be some kind of force field. And hey, is that our first Viro-Kun? Alright, some new enemy lore. The Viro-Kun, a virus with a slightly criminal streak and a heart of gold. They're based on computer viruses and such have a sickly appearance. They have a criminal record, prefer to get things for free, and are mischievous. Okay, yeah, there's some interesting lines of, like, neutral dialogue that can pop up. Such as, I'm the fever, I'm the chill, don't let this bug you, Happy New Year, 1997. That's a very suspicious line, because it raises the possibility of this game being set in 1997, which does not seem correct. More likely, this is a really old virus on really old computers, and the reason Spampton is obsessed with 1997 is presumably because that was like the peak of his career. However, that would also prove that 1997 is in the past rather than being a modern thing that's going on. So yeah, this game almost certainly takes place in the roughly present day 2020s. There's some evidence for that. Not a ton. Like the one piece of date evidence that we have is in the files, but it's unused. It's Rousey's unused journal or manual. That's what it was. And on its cover, it says like 2020 202X, implying it's in the 2020s. But this game is set in the 2020s. But beyond that, though, we don't know much. Some of the Virocoons can also say, "I've got a love letter for you. Got your nose." I assume love letter is meant to be like some form of virus, perhaps referencing the various, sketchy viruses on the internet. If ambulance is present, it can say, "This shrink's out of control." If you get rid of ambulance first, Virocoon says, "Yaha, I'm home free." So there's some unused acts for Susie and Rousey. If you use there's an unused Susie act, in which she says, "What? You want me to cook something?" Okay, yeah. In some older version of this fight, you could like feed them soup in order to make them feel better, or something like that. And so Susie's like, "What? You want me to cook something?" And then Rousey says, "If you're sick, shouldn't you have some soup? Say ah." In the current version of the game, but if you do with Susie's S action, she says, "Stick it to the man, dude." Even if that means cloning yourself or whatever. Further emphasizing Susie's, rebellious nature. Rousey, however, says, "Not everybody knows this, but crimes are bad. Did you know that?" Which sounds like some sort of after-school special PSA for kids. If the spare conditions are met, it says either spare or just what the doctor ordered, or kindness is contagious. If you check on the Virocoon, it says this sick virus needs affordable healthcare. Good luck with that. We don't have that in any version of this reality. Virocoon is sweating suspiciously. Virocoon uses a text document as a tissue. Virocoon is poking round things with a spear. Poking round things with a spear. Virocoon is beeping a criminal tune. Oh, that's funny. Implying that Virocoon pirated some music. That's cute. Smells like cherry syrup? That's strange. What does that mean? That's a reference I don't get. You treated Virocoon with care. It's no longer infectious. Everyone treated the enemy with tender loving care. All enemies feel great. Rousey cooked up a cure is an unused one. Yeah, okay, another unused act for Rousey is Rousey cooked up a cure, sickness was cured, everyone's HP up. And another unused act for Susie was Susie cooked up a cure, Susie put a hot dog in the microwave, she forgot to poke holes in it, the hot dog exploded. However, one of Susie's other acts includes she commiserated with the enemy, Susie encouraged evil. And Rousey has an act where he says, Rousey tried to steer the enemy down the right path. Rousey tried to rehabilitate. If their health is really low, they say Virocoon looks extra sick, and if spare conditions are met, Virocoon looks healthy. Okay. According to the trivia page on Virocoon's Wikipedia, or whatever page, the fandom wiki, Happy New Year 1997 is a reference to the Happy 99 computer virus, which, when executed, created a computer window display with the title Happy New Year 1999. The 1999 in the original quote has been changed to reference Spamton's favorite year, 1997. Okay, makes sense. So it's a virus reference, but also a Spamton reference. And also potentially, emphasizes how old these things are. I've got a love letter for you appears to be a reference to the I Love You computer worm, a virus sent by email that propagated by hijacking computers and emailing copies of itself as an executable file disguised as a love letter text file. Okay, so they're all references to various virus-related stuff. Nothing too crazy. Take care. You treated Virocoon with care, and it's no longer infectious. Just what the doctor ordered. I'm the fever. I'm the chill. Oh, God. take care. X. Oh, it's this. Everyone treat the enemy with tender, loving care. All the enemies felt great. Ah, look at their cute little outfits. Here's a little detail that I think is interesting. All of these outfits reference something about the characters. With Ralsei, he has a cake, which we already know from this chapter that he likes to bake cakes for people. He actually references it in the first chapter. It also has a little red heart on it, which is cute. Doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's kind of interesting that the rainbow is blue, red, and yellow. It's not exactly how rainbows are typically depicted, but I guess it's a miniature rainbow, so it's probably fine. Then there's Susie, who has a giant syringe with a glowing point at the end. And a little floating skull, which, you know, I guess that's referencing how Susie is violent. However, the most interesting detail that I thought of was the one with Chris. Chris is providing pills, which is interesting. It might not mean anything, but it's in one of the unused versions of Noelle's bedroom in this chapter. You can see what might be pills on her side table. So that could be a reference to that, because her and Chris go way back. Maybe there were times when Chris had to remind Noelle to take her pills or something. Lots of possibilities. However, what is more interesting is the drink Chris is carrying. There's steam rising out of it, implying it is hot, and it's brown. Meaning that there's an above average chance that that's meant to be hot chocolate, which is something that we learn in both chapters is something very precious to Chris. It's deeply associated with Chris's feelings and relationship with Asriel. And if it turns out Asriel is dead, then that makes it even more heartbreaking. So the idea that Chris would try to make someone feel better by using the thing that always makes them feel better is really, really cute and really, really sad. So I thought that was an interesting detail. Just what the doctor ordered, kindness is contagious. Alright, let's get out of here. Wait, is this another puzzle? You do it. The hell is that? A driver's license number? Can we use it and drive your mom's car? That's a funny little thing. Maybe we can make your mom's car cooler first. I'm thinking like purple with flames. That's funny. Very cute. Chris, well, stand here so you can spell freely. Chris, spell a swear. I don't think they can with these letters. Oh. Wait, you checked? Chris, do your best. This is such a great little interaction. It is like a rare bit of insight from Susie. Like, she's not very perceptive, but when she does notice things, it's really funny. The fact that Ralsei noticed is an interesting detail because that means he's self-aware enough to... Well, it implies that there's layers to him with regards to, you know, his goody two-shoes facade. It may be that perhaps there's parts of him that are a little less nice and cute and soft than he would like to let on. Maybe he just wants to appear super nice and friendly and perfect for the sake of Chris or someone like that. You typed agree to all. Thank you for agreeing to this peon release form. Now you are all legally my minions, and I can use your likenesses for funny statues. What if we just don't do what you say? In that case, I would be forced to use another guy, probably. Better get started on that then. Okay, but I'm still going to use your likenesses. That's so funny. What's funny is, like, I don't really know, but I'm not sure if this actually allows you to do anything. Like, what did this accomplish? Like, did we get a blue check mark? Or did we get anything? Is this just an empty room that you can do for fun? That's pretty funny if so. I'm actually kind of curious about that. Yeah, as far as I can tell, there's no use for that, but it's an interesting detail. I guess I'll fight this Raccoon and get them recruited. I'll probably cut this out. And Raccoon is fully recruited. It's so strange that, like, Raccoon only requires 4 to be recruited. Like, you'd expect there to be more to it than that. Like, why is it only 4 for him, or them, or whatever they are, but it's like 7 or 8 or some other number for other characters? Seems kind of random. And here we got some more teacups, and the Sweet Cap'n Cakes again. Always showing up, Team Rocket wannabes. Good luck figuring out which ride to take. Yeah, there's 3 of them. This right ride is the right one. Yeah, so we'll go through all of them. Oh, dang. I missed some of them. Oh, you had to get all of them? No. Oh, okay. You should just look at the shadows. You shouldn't look at the orbs, because the orbs, there's no sense of dimensionality to them. It's really hard to tell how far away they are. It's way simpler to just look at the shadows of the orbs. Oh boy. Look at this nightmare. It'd be funny if the puzzle, like, it's actually missing the one letter you actually need. Like to see Bradley try and solve that. That's so mean. Hey Chris, pretty sure you don't have to do this. Perhaps this isn't a real word, Chris. Yeah, it is. It's Icy's catchphrase. Huh? What's its meaning then? I don't know. He just rolls his eyes up, froths his mouth, and says it? Or maybe that's just the muscly guy at the store. Chris, this looks like a strange word, but even if it's not real, you can still have fun, right? Wait, even if it's not real, you can still have fun, right? It's all a dream. It's not real, but it's still fun. Ooh, interesting. Kind of a meta line. If I recall correctly, the S, because you don't need, you do need, the S is like the sand sound, I think? No. I forget. Where is it that the, like, it makes like a, oh, is it the E? How do I get to the E? No. I think one of them makes like the sand voice sound, like the Icy is very cursed. In case that wasn't obvious. Also, Icy is old. Like, because like almost everything in the cyber world is old. Like, it's from the 90s. So the fact that there's anything Icy related here suggests Icy as a brand has probably been around for decades. So that's kind of interesting. And of course, you know, it's not that interesting, but This catchphrase appears on the word search in Undertale. However, in Undertale, it's pretty heavily implied that that word search is created by the lady at the library in that game. It used to be kind of a popular theory that, oh, maybe Sans brought it with him from the Deltarune reality. However, Legends of Localization pretty heavily spells out that, like, from Toby himself, that it was created by the library lady, which suggests to me that she created Icy. Like, Icy's an original character of hers. And it's just that in Undertale, he only appears once because it's a minor brand in the underground. Whereas in Deltarune, the monsters are above ground, and so the Icy brand has exploded in popularity. So that's an interesting thought. Although, in order for that to be true, the lady from that library would have to... I mean, she'd be super wealthy and popular and famous, wouldn't she? Correct me if I'm wrong, though. Yeah, okay, yeah. So there's a couple of different people in the library in Undertale, and we meet one of them, the Scarf Lady in Deltarune, but we've yet to meet the lady who's smoking, and she's the one who is implied to have created the crossword. And if I'm remembering correctly, we haven't met that lady's equivalent in Deltarune. And the reason we haven't met it could be because she is the founder of the Icy's brand, and she's super rich and doesn't live in the hometown as a result. So that's an interesting idea. It'd be really cool if later on we meet her, and she's like, "Don't tell anybody, but I'm the ultra wealthy, enigmatic owner of the Icy brand." Or maybe she'll be like, "Oh, I used to own it, but then I sold it, and then or something like that." So that's an interesting line of potential lore. Oh yeah, the shadows make it way easier. Another check marks. Chest is empty. Of course, the one you have to take has the easiest challenge. Another tree. Oh, this. We're probably getting close to a save point. Oh god, my friends got deleted. I do love these little musical bullet hell sequences. I think that's really neat. Dead end. Alright, what's the deal, twerp? Who's that twerp? The name's Sweet. Oh, like sweet? Oh, like sweets? That's a funny little joke, because it addresses the fact that, they can't see how his name is spelt. Don't tell me you haven't heard of the Sweet Cap'n Cakes. Doesn't ring a bell. Guess our act's still a bit underground. Which is funny, because the Dark World is underground. Sweet Cap'n Cakes, not only are we Cyberfield's best musical trio, false, we're also the last resistance against the Big Bad Queen and all her crew. And that starts with resisting you. What? We're fighting Queen too. Nuh-uh, Captain saw you help her kidnap some girl. Hey, Cap. We won't let anyone lay a finger on Mademoiselle's. Except us. That's not the point, Captain. It's like half the point. 60%. 55? We're rebels, not players. If you want more reason to hate the Sweet Captain Cakes, or at least to hate Cap'n, he's over here like, half the reason I'm doing this is to lay hands on babes. It's like, yeah, you suck. We're rebels that play. We don't play. We don't get. Sweet is struggling so hard to maintain the PR of the Sweet Captain Cakes. That's it. KK, get over here. KK, are we players? I'm a CD player. Wait, they're getting away. Sweet, chill. There'll be other bad guys. No, this is our chance. Are you ready? Let's fight. KK? Yeah? Play some battle music. Okay. This is some very silly battle music. Let me pull up their battle information because there may or may not be lore. Okay, yeah. I was just looking through the lines of dialogue, and there's a ton, but they're, like, depending on, like, who's talking, who's been injured, who's healing who, none of it's that interesting. Like, Cap'n has, like, oh, it's a mademoiselle if he dances with Susie. But, that's about the only noteworthy bit. That's right, if you fight these guys, they'll use, almond milk to heal themselves, just like, K-Round in Chapter 1. When the flavor text, some of the flavor text includes, Sweet is the energetic one, he looks up to KK. Cap'n is the smooth one, he looks up to KK. And KK is the silly one, he looks up to the other two. I think that may or may not be a joke about KK being taller than the other two, whereas KK looks up to, metaphorically, the other two. Yeah, there's some other stuff that we can talk about later when we get to their shop, but that's all as far as the battle. Yeah, the battle itself isn't really noteworthy. However, there is one detail that's interesting, which is that if Chris gets downed, Susie has some interesting dialogue. If Chris is down, Susie says, Chris, hey, Chris, the hell do we do now? We can't act if Chris is down. And Rousey says, don't worry, Susie, I'll just heal them. And then Susie says, hey, wait, why can't we act without Chris? And, you know, then it proceeds from normal. But what's interesting about that is that it proves, because she's calling out to Chris and Chris isn't responding, implying that when you're downed, you can't talk. And yet we're still controlling Susie and Rousey with our soul. So it's interesting. Because, you know, that shows further evidence that getting downed in Deltarune means you're unconscious. Which is sort of relevant for a couple reasons. Mostly because it shows how it's only when all three of you are defeated that your soul shatters. So it's like all three of you have to be beaten before you die. And just getting beaten up only knocks you unconscious. Although if you do get beaten up, the other characters still talk to you. So, in like the game over screen. So it's not exactly clear if they're dead or if it's just Chris who's dead. Or maybe you don't even die. Maybe you just get a game over. Yeah, there's something relevant there. The fact that Chris can... It's mostly interesting because in the Snowgrave route, if Chris gets downed in the Birdley fight, Noelle can still hear their voice, which giving her commands, which seems to be similar to how things work in regular combat with Chris, Susie, and Rousey, where even if Chris gets downed, we can still tell them what to do. So that's interesting. It also implies that Susie isn't aware that she's being given commands. And she's just doing what she wants, but she doesn't realize she's being told what to do. I don't know. There's some interesting connotations there. Yeah, Dance X. Lost the groove. So yeah, Chris is doing like the Russian, like, I forget what that's called. But the ha 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 dance. Susie is doing like, I forget what these dances are a reference to. Yeah, let me just see if there's any specific explanation. I bet the trivia page says something. Yeah, it doesn't really say. Yeah. All I know is that Chris is doing the Russian dance and Rouse is doing like the Snoopy dance from Peanuts or Charlie Brown or whatever you want to call it. It's interesting though because what is the connotation of Chris doing a Russian dance? Yeah, it's like a Russian folk dance or something. Russian squat dancing is what it's called. Yeah, interesting. Feel the beat down. Ring a ding dong. What? You want to see my moves? Oh yeah, I remember when Deltarune first came out, there was a bug that caused this little that little attack to last so long. Perhaps if we can get them all to dance, we can win? Taste the rhythm. Prism. Chris, just keep trying to dance. Oh god. The music notes track. Ah. I forgot my next dance move. Maybe if you keep dancing? Wait, I can't dance with bad guys. Hey, is this really working? Maybe if Chris, maybe if we tried ballroom dancing instead? That's pretty funny. That implies Rouse knows how to ballroom dance. Which is actually kind of interesting, because I seem to remember that the Castletown theme actually follows a waltz tempo. Like a 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 kind of tempo. So I think that's, if I'm remembering correctly. I'm not very educated on dance, but I remember learning that in some videos. So him being also affiliated with these more sophisticated things is interesting. Hey, why the hell do we need Chris to act? Because that's Chris's unique talent. So you think I'm too stupid to dance by myself? This is an interesting point as well, because it emphasizes how Rouse really wants to make Chris feel special. Because Chris can't use magic. That's something that's repeatedly emphasized. Whereas Susie and Rouse can. And so Rouse is trying to keep that mechanic unique to Chris. Which is interesting. Because not only does it bring further attention to the fact that Chris can't use magic, which is probably important for the lore, but is also emphasizing Rouse's sycophantic kind of relationship with Chris, where he's just really interested in making Chris happy and just sort of doing whatever Chris wants. And that's kind of interesting. And it could suggest a lot of things. And she learned S action. She can act from her magic menu. Susie, I don't think you should... Happy feet, dumbass! That's one of my favorite lines in this chapter. Susie made Rouse learn R action even though he didn't want to. I'm sorry, Chris. It's interesting that it's in parentheses, potentially implying Rouse is thinking this to Chris. Sweet shimmies defiantly. KK is a CD player. Cap'n spins his cap around. But yeah. Dance. 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 Everyone is dancing. And this fight is finally over. Man, they really do just give these guys a random cutscene of dance montage. Hey, losers, wrap it up. Battle's over. Over? In other type words, we lost? Does that mean we can be friends? KK, no! Fighting's not really my style, anyway. Yeah, because you're a coward. I mean, it was fun dancing, but sweet, don't worry. I think our dancing beat them. Beat them? Yeah, all mercy-like. Oh my god, this is actually, I realize now, this is I think this is an Undertale reference. Because, yeah, they used mercy on us. They did some silly nonsense, like dancing with us, which convinced us that they're cool. Just like how, you know, Chris, or rather Frisk, would often do all sorts of silly things, including dancing with people, in order to get them to think Frisk was neat, and would thus not try to kill them. Yes. Hey, you there. Welcome to the good side. We are the good side. Just go with it, Susie. Let's rendezvous at our junk shop. God, you butchered that. I hate you. We jammed the door shut, but we'll kick it open. All right, everyone, let's go. You can actually go there, I think, early, but I think it's like there's like a force field and the door is closed. Incredible animation. And I guess this is supposed to be the cliff that they came down from. Let me pull up this cliff in the files. I'm kind of curious, like what else is up there, or if anything. I just noticed there's like an unused file in here called Sean's Musical Bullet Tunnel. That's funny. Okay. Yeah, no, there's nothing else up there. Susie looks so cool. And Rouse looks adorable, as always. Susie, Rouse, Chris, Susie, Rouse. Very cute. Does kind of raise the question of who did those fireworks, but oh, I missed the opportunity to if you run off of this way before Susie and Rouse, they'll rush to catch up with you, and we'll cut this corner, and the magic invisible plot glass will appear to let them walk across the gap, which is really funny. The way to the city is now open. I think I'll stay in the countryside a bit longer, though. Everything is so naturally green here. I'm charmed by the local music and flavors. I'm just kind of curious. Ouch. Like, if I go back up here, what is here? Oh, can't get across again. Darn. Wait, how am I doing on the check marks? You found three check marks. Elite. I will now live in your city. Maybe our cyber paths will cybercross once more in Green's Mansion. So silly. In the meantime, let me show you the power of the blue check marks. Oh, you just called it check marks this time. What is this implying? That Twitter grants you access to fireworks and fan art? I mean, I do get some fan art on Twitter from time to time. Maybe it's implying that Twitter's like mostly nonstop. Like, I don't know. I'm not going to think about it too hard. I don't care enough to look for a Twitter metaphor of all things. Ah. I heard this unassuming store is the Rebel base. But I realized I don't really know how I would help them. I don't really want to buy any more bagels. It's an interesting shop design. Other than that, they're like speakers, headphones, a record player. Crash, boom, bang! There's a terrific noise coming from the building nearby. You're filled with the power of noise music. If that doesn't summarize Cap'n Cake's, Sweet Cap'n Cake's music, then I don't know what does. Save. Alright, let me just check something. Yeah, okay, and we finished recruiting them. They're level 7, Christ! They like retro games and dislike the federal justice system. I find that... Oh, wait, that's interesting, isn't it? Gosh darn it. Okay, well, I mean, that's actually lore, isn't it? That implies there's a federal justice system in the world of Deltarune. Implying further... I mean, it's always been implied, but it further implies that Deltarune takes place in a United States-type country. One that has a federal and a state-level justice system. Because I don't think you would need to distinguish between federal and state if there weren't different, like, municipalities or whatever. So, yeah, that's interesting. I'm finding lore in all the strange places. Alright. And with that, I'm going to stop recording. I think I've been recording for, like... You know, I said I was going to record for 2 hours, and I kind of did. I just didn't make as much progress as I was hoping, but it is what it is. We actually got some interesting lore today, though. Specifically with regards to the cyber trees and, I guess, the federal justice system. So that's pretty funny. Anyway. Alright. We are back. Okay, let's pop in here. Yo, what's up? Hey. Alright, here's the Sweet Cap'n Cakes. Let me take a look at their backgrounds for a second. They've got like a computer set up. I wonder if this background is visible in the game files? Because if it is, that would be a much more convenient way of analyzing this background, because there's so many characters in the way. Okay, yeah, I pulled up the background from the game files so I can look at it. Most notable details, there's like some cassettes lying around, there's a keyboard, there's a monitor in the middle with the bars moving up and down, there's some speakers, there's a cymbal, like the musical cymbal, like with a drum set. There's what appears to be like a little like dog whistle, or like, not a dog whistle, but like the kind you use in sports, like the... Yeah, like the one like, I don't know, an umpire might have in a baseball or something. Or in soccer, whatever. I don't do sports. There's also maracas lying around. There's a tube sticking out of the keyboard, so it might be one of those like funny little instruments that you like blow into. It's like a electric bagpipe type thing. I'm not very knowledgeable on this topic. And then the top left we have this big mouth screen face thing that has its eyes flashing purple, which is mildly menacing, to be frank. But yeah, nothing else to note on the background. Talk. Let's trade info about yourselves. I'm Sweet. The ladies call me Cap'n. KK. We used to work the sound in this town until Queen came round. KK is short for cakes. So silly. So yeah, backstory, lore, whatever. These guys used to work the sound in this town, which could be read as running the sound on the PC, or as, I don't know, running music programs. So the way they phrased it though is, we used to work the sound in this town until Queen came around, which if I didn't know better, it would almost sound like they're saying Queen was an outsider, but that's so explicitly not the case, and no one else ever implies that she came from somewhere else. So I'm thinking this is just meant to be like, she used to be more chill and stayed up in her mansion or whatever, and then she started getting tyrannical. She made music against the law, unless you make a song she likes, but the only junk she enjoys. So it's interesting. She made music against the law, unless you make a song she likes. Which kind of raises the question of why. Why would she make music illegal? Like, what does she achieve by that? Like, was that a purpose-driven choice? Or was that done because she just has become more tyrannical in general and is just being rude? Outlawing music, like, it's very reminiscent of... Was it Footloose? Where they outlawed music? Or did they outlaw dancing? The ban on dancing. I see. Okay, so yeah, it wasn't a ban on music. But, I don't know. It kind of just made me wonder. I was like, is that relevant? Because, to be fair, from the lore perspective, we can deduce a lot. Or at least a decent amount from just analyzing the music. So is that like kind of a meta thing where it's like trying to block us access to the music in order to keep us from learning lore? Probably not. Are reverse diss tracks where the vocalist put themselves down and praises Queen, or noise music. What is noise music? Electric static, feedback, screaming, excessive monotony, surprise, interesting. But even if Queenie tries to put a limiter on us, you can't stop the music. Hear that? We'll just go underground. Crash, boom, bang. That's why we made this junk shop. We'll fund our musical rebellion. Can we make noise music too? And then performance. What? Want to see what we got? Yo, can you handle this? Hold on to your antennas. Yo, how was that? Did you get rocked? All our songs are only 4 seconds long. Queen wasn't always so harsh. No, she was. She just got worse somehow. So yeah, Queen was always harsh. She just was more limited in her harshness, whereas now she's gone full evil tyrant. So yeah, this is kind of important lore. It wasn't till that dark fountain showed up that she started going into overdrive. And while use of the term overdrive here could be read as, just, a quirky little way for these cyberworld characters to speak, it could also be referring to the actual meaning of the word, which is a very high geared motor vehicle used at high speeds to reduce wear and save fuel. It's a state of intense activity. So it's like, it's about going into a far more intense version of normal operations. And based off of what we've heard from Toby Fox about how King might have gotten worse because of the Dark Fountain, that could imply that Queen is similar. And the fact that they're specifically mentioning the Dark Fountain is, I think, important. And it's interesting because, and I think I've already talked about this in a different part of this lore playthrough, but there's the only two interpretations I can really see is either that it makes you more intense in general, or it's imparting some relic of the knight's will onto the leaders. Or, I guess the third option is that instead of imparting the knight's will, it's imparting something else's will, something within the Dark Fountains, aka Jeff, or Gaster, as he's also known as. However, given that they specifically mentioned that she was always harsh and she just got worse, and it's kind of mentioned repeatedly the king was always kind of a snoot, kind of a bitter old man, but the Dark Fountain made him a murderous, bitter old man. I think it's more likely that it feeds off of your extreme emotions and uses that to push you towards more extreme actions. So like the queen is different from the king. The queen doesn't want to hurt people per se. She actually wants to help humanity, or rather, Lightners. However, she feels like the way to do it is through force and through tyranny. But she's always been a bit tyrannical. However, it's not like her motivations have been changed by the Dark Fountain. They've just been radicalized to an extreme direction. So it's entirely possible that we'll get a chapter where the leader is a genuinely good person and there's nothing wrong with them at all. They're just pursuing a course of action that they don't realize is wrong. And you could argue Queen kind of falls into that camp, but she does threaten to kill people once or twice, which is a bit of a no-no. Even if it was an empty threat, which it probably was, it's still a threat. So it would be interesting if in one of the future chapters, the leader of a dark world is explicitly just good. So like an Asgore situation where he's doing something evil, but it's almost entirely justified by the context. Actually, it would be an even more sympathetic situation than Asgore, where instead of doing something evil because he has to, it's him doing something evil because he doesn't realize it's evil. Because he's just trying to save the day, trying to save humanity, or save the Darkners, or save the Lightners, save someone. And then in that sort of chapter, the goal wouldn't be just, defeating the leader. The goal would simply be getting close enough to the leader to explain what's going on. So basically, a similar deal to this thing with Rousey, but a little bit more, a bit less tyrannical on the part of the leader. That would be an interesting direction. Like an ultra-benevolent leader who's perhaps too benevolent to the point that it's kind of detrimental to them. That'd be kind of interesting. Knight this, knight that, fountain that. Like, what does that knight even have going for it that I don't? Come on. One of the rare mentions of the knight, it's capitalized here, so it's a title. It's not just a knight, it is the knight. And, fountain is tied with it because the knight is the one who created the fountain. What does that knight even have going for it that I don't? Come on. And it's interesting that they say it. Although, the tricky thing is, we can't go assuming that the use of pronouns, or the lack thereof, by someone as irrelevant as the Sweet Cap'n Cakes, especially someone as irrelevant as Cap'n, is, hard lore. So I would not consider that to be particularly meaningful. Like, you could argue, this proves that Cap'n somehow knew that the knight was like some sort of non-entity, like an entity that is so alien from normal living that it's an it rather than a he or a him or her or them. It's just an it, a thing. I mean, to be fair, there are some people out there who go by it, but there's also some people who think being referred to as it is demeaning. So I think realistically, given the context, it's more likely that this is an abstract, like, we don't really know what the knight is, so we're calling it an it. So that's my 2 cents on the use of it there. But like I said, she wasn't always so bad. She used to give me sweets for being so sweet. Huh? I never got candy, because you suck, Cap'n. But yeah, no, Sweet used to get sweets. So yeah, the queen used to be... This is like the first hint that she was benevolent. And like she's, got her issues, but she's ultimately has good intentions. And that's still the truth now. Like, she hasn't become evil. She's just become extreme. Which is further proof that the king really was a bad egg. Maybe he wasn't before he got mentally shattered by being abandoned, but it's very much proof that the king is worse than probably most of these Dark World leaders on a morality spectrum. You kept calling her a hot mama, Cap. Yeah, is that wrong? She looks like a mom and tends to overheat. Does she tend to overheat? I mean, she drinks battery acid. Is that to cool her down? I mean, her face goes all red during a Giga Queen fight, and she tends to overheat. What does it mean if a computer overheats? Like, what happens to the computer? An overheating computer can intermittently restart, shut down, or experience performance issues. Eventually, excessive heat can damage the internal components. When the computer overheats, you may experience symptoms such as fans inside the computer becoming louder as they start spinning faster to remove excess heat. I guess you could argue that in the Giga Queen fight, she like loses battery power and shuts down at the end while steam and like smoke is shooting out of her ears or whatever. So it's like, you could argue that's what's happening there. However, I'm thinking this is probably not lore in any meaningful way. Beyond proving further that Captain is a little scumbag. KK, help me out here. KK, what do you two think? Or what do you think? Huh? Me? I like candy. Yeah, you're right, KK. We gotta focus on what's important. The bad fights will get out of tune. Anyone have any lemon drops? How does lemon drops come up, like, frequently in this game? I don't know if frequently is the right word, but I can't help but feel like they've mentioned lemon drops before. I doubt that's, like, super relevant, but I'm gonna check the code anyway, just to be sure. Because you never know with these games. You might think something's totally irrelevant, and then you'll be like, oh, these were the lemon drops that connected the lore. If there's any other mentions of lemon drops, I could not find them at a quick glance. Maybe it was in like the Valentines or something like that. Oh yeah, for timeline purposes, real life timeline. I'm recording this portion of the Chapter 2 lore playthrough after the big newsletter that just came out, the Valentine's newsletter, which included a bunch of Valentines by various lore characters, including, most notably, someone who is probably, definitely, almost certainly Gaster. Junk work. Our main gig is making scrap into machines. Our clients are sometimes a bit off-key, though. They smell off-key, too. Yeah, it's off-key in this case would be a pun, so they're kind of weird, kind of strange, because they're musicians. Making scrap into machines. Like some little weird guy. He wanted us to sneak into Queen's Mansion. We're just rebels, we don't want to get in trouble. Them mentioning that he smells bad is also kind of a giveaway that it's spammed in, because not only does he want to sneak into Queen's Mansion, and not only does he want a robot body, but also he lives in dumpsters and thus smells bad. So yeah, almost definitely spammed in that they're talking about here. We're just rebels, we don't want to get in trouble. Let's see. But recently we got a real high-class client, a man of taste. He had a way with words. I couldn't even understand him. Which is almost definitely Rule's card. Not only is he almost incomprehensible and speaks with a fake, fancy accent, but he also built a machine that is later used not only to fight us, but used by the Sweet Cap'n Cakes to build the Thrash Machine mecha. So, makes sense. Now, all we gotta do is follow the blueprints, right? It'll be our big time break. Yeah, haha, it's gonna break apart big time. And this is also the hint that it's Rules card because the blueprints have only really come up once so far in Deltarune, and it was the blueprints for the Thrash Machine in Chapter 1. So, makes sense. How Rules card got a hold of all this stuff, got the Thrash Machine, whether he found the Thrash Machine's pieces or found the Thrash Machine's blueprints is kind of confusing and unclear. Because they mention here that they have the blueprints, so we know they have at least the blueprints that Susie and Lancer made. What they don't have is what they don't state that they have is the remaining pieces of the original Thrash Machine. So yeah, it's a little confused. Sell. Buy musical food with a crunch. Glow wrist. Armor made of green wires. Mecha saber. Press hilt to extend. Auto axe. Make sure to charge it. Okay, we've got a couple new items here that we'll need to look at the interactions for real quick. I think we've already covered the CD bagel and the glow wrist, which just leaves the mecha saber and the auto axe. Saber is a type of sword. You know, it's like it's kind of like a. I think it's similar to a fencing weapon. I think. Am I right? No, it's not. It's like a long curved sword, single edge. So no, it's just like a it's just like a regular sword. They often have like a little hilt or handguard that's kind of similar to a rapier, but it's not necessarily the same, I don't think. Yeah. So yeah, Mecha Saber. The blade extends when you press the hilt. Cha-chick. Shop text says press hilt to extend. It gives +4 attack and the annoying attribute. So that's funny. Presumably from clicking it. If you attempt to equip it to Susie, she says, nah. If you attempt to equip it to Rouse, he says, you'd look cool holding it, Chris. And if you try to attempt to equip it to Noelle, she clicks it, and she goes, scared myself. In the light world, this is one of the first items that actually gets a light world equivalent. Its description is, it's tempting to click it repeatedly. And yeah, it just became a mechanical pencil. And the fact that it extends from the hilt could mean that it's kind of a lightsaber type weapon in the Dark World. Unfortunately, our weapons and armor aren't reflected in our overworld sprites, which is kind of a shame. But it is what it is. Yeah. So nothing super deep here on the lore department. There was a mechanical pencil in the classroom, or not the classroom, in the computer lab. Then there's the auto axe. It's described as, make sure to charge it by plugging it into the wall. Let's see if, make sure to charge it. And it gives 4 attack and the bad idea attribute. What? If you equip to Susie, it makes chainsaw noises and she laughs maniacally. If you attempt to give it to Rouse, he says in parentheses, is this a good idea? If you attempt to equip to Noelle, she turns it on for a second, and it goes, and she goes, scared myself. She is very frightenable. The trivia page on the wiki suggests that it might be like some sort of electric toothbrush, given that it has to be charged, and that's the sort of thing that maybe would show up in a computer lab. It's a bit dubious, to be honest. Exactly how or what this is. Unfortunately, not much in the way of lore. So I'll leave those for now. So yeah, and that's it for the Sweet Cackle Cakes. We can get out of here. See ya, smell ya, hear ya. Oh, if you attempt to sell them the Devil's Tail, Devil's Knife, Dealmaker, Puppet Scarf, or Thorn Ring, they'll say, maybe better keep that, and won't buy it from you. But beyond that, that's all they say. So, neat. We can continue. Yeah. Let's see what we got going on. Another one of these cyber trees. All my friends turned into werewires, but it's no big deal. I've been on Queen's side since the beginning, so I'm safe. Complain about Queen, but she gets a lot done. Yeah, this is very clearly, I think this is the same Fedora guy from earlier, or at least he's meant to be another one of them, the Fedora plug boy, which means that he's also meant to be a I studied the Blade Redditor type parody thing, and he supported Queen's tyrannical rule from the beginning, and that means that he won't be targeted, which is obviously a reference to how tyrants typically are depicted by the people who support them until the tyrant turns on them. And the fact that he's like, say what you will about the evil tyrant, she gets stuff done, is very reminiscent of certain unmonetizable regimes being praised for making certain types of vehicles run on time. I will specify no further. Oh. Do I have all the wires? Smorgasbord 2. It's just as funny the second time. Oh, we have S actions now. Okay, I kind of want to use the S actions. Susie, you use S action on Werewire. Ralse, you use R action on Werewire. Susie yanked the wire. Ralse charmed the wire. Okay. We've already covered like all these in a previous. Whenever we discuss these guys, like what the special action interactions are. I'm just doing it again or just doing it for the first time because I've never seen them before, and I was just kind of curious. Susie roared like a lion. Ralse blinks at task. Very cute. Susie encouraged evil. Ralse tried to rehabilitate. Yay, we won. Got a ton of money. But yeah, no, he's still there right now, the plug boy. But once we scroll far enough and come back, he's gone. And has been turned into a werewire. Showing what happens to people who side with evil tyrants, assuming they won't be targeted. You open the treasure chest, inside was tension bit. Tension bit was added to your items. Hee. Shall I help you save? No, I shan't. I haven't the faintest idea what that is. Yeah. So, this is a joke referring to how the save button on a lot of modern files and whatnot still looks like a floppy disk, even though floppy disks have nothing to do with saving. It's just an old school relic of how, an older time. Even though floppy disks aren't used anymore, there's still the icon for saving. But yeah, not exactly the most subtle commentary as far as political discourse is concerned. Did you know supporting the bad regime is bad, and especially if they're motivated by hate, they're gonna be hateful towards you too? It's not exactly thrilling, but it's fine. It was cute enough for the time. More trees. These guys shooting bombs. What else is in here? What happens if you shoot that? Oops. I was hoping to let him hang out for a little longer. Oh well. Oh. Oops. One moment. Gotta reload for the chest. You open the treasure chest. Inside was revive mint. Neat. Well, that fire raccoon's gone. Man, this heavily discourages coming back to this room. More of these. I am a champion, a Giga Chad champion. I got all those, baby. Oh, hey, it's the night sky. We went so far up that the background changed. Wow. That's interesting. Because there's like different types of lights. There's like the yellow ones and the blue ones. Ragger 2. Let's see what that is. It's a weapon that can be found if all 70 purple orbs are collected during a teacup ride. It can only be equipped by Ralsei and gives 5 attack and -1 magic. It is the natural update of the Ragger with its focus on attack rather than magic. However, unlike the Ragger, Ragger 2 has an actual deficit to the magic stat. Another similar scarf for Ralsei is the Puppet Scarf, which has a very high damage stat, but the magic decrease makes dual heal and heal prayer healing amounts very low. Okay. Kind of interesting. Yeah, its description is a sharp and scratchy scarf. Worse healing, better attack. So yeah, this is kind of interesting that they're pairing like a decrease in magical power with an increase in attack power. Because if you think about it, isn't that kind of the dynamic of monsters and humans in Undertale? Monsters are less physically powerful, but they have magic, whereas humans are very physically powerful but don't have magic. So, interesting. You know, the whole deal on the topic of magic, the whole deal of humans having the power to create a barrier in in Undertale, and they're like waving magical staffs around, yet humans are described as not having magic later on, is kind of confusing. And it kind of makes you wonder, if they don't have magic, how are they able to create the barrier? Because the barrier is also, like, at least once described as magic, or as a spell or something. I don't remember specifically where, but people pointed it out to me. And that kind of makes me wonder where they got those artifacts from, those staves, like whatever, or staves? Whatever allowed them to create the barrier. And if Undertale and Deltarune are parallel realities with similar histories, it kind of makes you wonder what exactly... You know, because like we kind of assumed that Deltarune was a reality where the Undertale war didn't happen. And we kind of looked at it as Undertale being the baseline and Deltarune being kind of a variant, where it's like, instead of the normal course of events of a war between humans and monsters, instead there was peace and, you know, the current reality. But if my theories are correct, and the current reality is like this hellish time loop that no one can escape from, then that's pretty bad. Like, that's worse, arguably, than the Undertale timeline. Which kind of makes me wonder if someone did something to create the Undertale reality the way it is. Like, I wonder if someone went to the Undertale reality and they're the reason. Like, maybe they gave whoever the humans the staffs and like taught them how to create the barrier. Like, maybe they're the reason the war happened. Maybe they saw that was like the only way to ensure that the world would survive and escape the time loop, or avoid the time loop that Deltarune faces. Huh. That's an interesting thought. That'll probably have to come up in my Gaster multiverse plan theory video when I get around to that. Look at all those buildings. Yellow triangles implying, you know, be careful. And then a queen's face. Alright. Hey, what the hell are these things? Looks like if we can ride them, they might bring us over to the fountain. Really? Well, let's get on. Enough, you foolish children. Let's take a moment to appreciate not only the great music, but also this background. We see the city rolling by, and we see the fountain, which compared to the buildings, the fountain is bloody huge. Like, those buildings are like skyscrapers. The fountain is gigantic. Like, way bigger than what's depicted when you actually approach it. It makes me wonder if this is... There's a layer of hell in Dungeons & Dragons that's notable for having this, like, weird dimensions to it. And there's this big, foreboding black tower. And it's always visible on the horizon. And no matter what direction you go, no matter whether you go towards it or away, it's always visible at the same size and shape and distance. And it's, if like you turn away from it, it'll be behind you. And if you like, it's always visible, always there. And I guess the reason I bring it up is because I wonder if a similar like space-time warping is happening with the fountain, where it looks huge from a distance, but when you get up close, it's actually pretty small. Either that, or when you approach the dark fountain, like this is like just the outermost layer of the dark fountain, and you have to get deeper in and get to the inner pillar in order to seal it. I'm giving Toby Fox the benefit of the doubt and assuming this discrepancy makes sense in the lore. It's interesting, though. Because, I mean, we know the Dark Fountain is what gives this place dimensionality. It goes from being a light world closet or whatever into a full-blown city. So it makes sense that there's some physical time-space warping happening. I guess I'm just wondering if there's anything meaningful to that. It's also, like, we've discussed at length the confusing, contrast of it's a dark fountain, but it sheds some sort of light. Like, Lancer mentions getting, like, a shadow tan, or, like, an anti-tan from the dark fountain. And in the light world, dark fountains literally devour light. Like, it's not just darkness, it's, like, anti-light. Photon readings negative and all that. Which leads me to think that presumably the dark world should be completely devoid of any visibility. And later in this chapter, in fact, we find a lamp that's described as being a shadow lamp, and that it lights things with shadow, which is really confusing. Especially because, like, ambulance is described as having lights on its head. But then again, maybe that's just short for shadow lights? Maybe they just assume that they're talking about shadow lights. Because, like, it's not like we specify that we use electromagnetic lights, you know, it's like... or electronic lights or whatever, it's like we just say a light. What that implies to me is that the fact that we're able to see anything... like, maybe darkeners can see by the shadow light, but why would lighteners be able to see that way? Because in the light world, things don't work that way. It almost makes me think that whenever they go through into the dark world and their physical appearance changes, it's not just like an aesthetic thing. It makes me think that they're literally becoming different. Like they're physically and physiologically different with different attributes. Like light world Chris and dark world Chris do not function the same. And we know that's true because in the light world, we still use the Undertale menu system. And the Undertale menu system, you know, if we assume that means that, like, the combat system in the light world is similar to Undertale, getting knocked to 0 HP kills you. You don't get knocked unconscious. You don't, you know, like, there's nothing of the sort. You just die. Which means that the fact that you only get knocked down in the light world, KO'd, or in the dark world, you only get KO'd, seems to suggest that whatever the physicality of Chris and Susie is, it's drastically different in the dark world, and specifically, it's more forgiving. Like, whatever wounds they suffer, they don't last. It doesn't matter what injuries you suffer. But Birdley's injuries last. And yet, why? Why do Birdley's injuries last, but not Chris or Susie's? Because at the end of the chapter, if Birdley gets beat up in any of his fights, his wing is injured, and that translates over to the light world. Which seems... is the implication that the only reason Chris and Rousey don't have injuries in the light world, or Chris and Susie, is because they have Rousey to heal them? Is that what they're implying? I mean, I guess that also raises the question of why Rousey doesn't heal Birdley. Because, like, I understand that it'd be kind of a hassle to be like, oh, keeping track of whether you take damage and then translating that into injuries in the light world would be difficult. But it wouldn't have to be that complicated. You could just be like, you know, have like one line that hints at it. Yeah, I have to assume that's because Rousey heals them that they don't, you know, have any injuries. But you can still be injured, but it's still more lackadaisical than it would be in the light world regarding, like, suffering injuries. And since this is a world of magic and dark fountains and reality warping, that makes me think that normal physical laws are much more, are either downright irrelevant or are not as relevant as soul power or magical power or whatever this place is made of. I do have a video that I need to make at some point discussing the mechanics of the Dark World and specifically what happens to Chris and Susie when they enter the Dark World, specifically Chris. Because I think it kind of further hints at Chris's true nature of being possessed, the fact that they're blue. I don't think they're supposed to be blue. I think if another human came down here, they would not be blue. Because why would Susie become just more purple and Noelle become more of what she is, while Chris turns blue? I think the explanation is tied up with their soul being different. Beyond that, I have no convenient answers, but none that I care to dive into. Like, I have theories, but nothing super interesting or relevant to this particular lore playthrough. Although, that does remind me of something else. What was it? It was right there a moment ago. Oh, in the Valentines, they mentioned that, like, because whoever it was, it's kind of, I kind of read it as being in the light world, and like you hear the sound of someone walking away, but you don't see anyone. And that kind of makes me wonder if that's hinting at how it looks if a Darkener enters the light world. Like if Rouse enters the light world, would people hear him walking but not see him? Like, is he like only quasi there? Because, like, he doesn't exist properly without a dark fountain, so he only, like, it's like a ghost? That's an interesting line of thought. I have been merciful to you thus far, but now it is time for your unwillful imprisonment. Capture. Drop the capturing capsules. You missed. That was not a miss, it was a tactical calibration. So, are you gonna try it again? No, I only have like 4 cages. Okay, wait. I have a small plot twist for you. Come forward, my peon. Sorry, I just couldn't say no. Noelle? Oh, before I forget, as far as analyzing their little roller coaster carts, Noelle has a little one, like a little, you know, she's got like one with like snow skis, and it's all like winter themed. It also has like a little crown, which is kind of curious. Like, what is she, a princess? Or a queen? Is she royalty? Kind of interesting. Because, you know, in her game, she's trying to go to like an ice palace. And palaces are usually with royalty, so maybe this is in reference to that. But yeah, Chris has a cart with 3 soul images on the side. Is it 3 souls or is it 4? Because actually, you know what? I feel like I've done this before where I've looked at the cart and been like, is that a reference to my theory? And then I look closer and it was like, oh no, it's literally like got 4 soul images on it, so it's probably not meaningful at all. Okay, no. It is not a reference because there's 4 souls, but also it's specifically a Zelda reference because when you take damage to your cart in the fight, the hearts deplete. Like, that's like the, or at the very least, there's a sprite version in the files where it's like, oh, if it's hurt, then it only has 3.5 hearts. I don't know if that's actually used in the fight itself. Yeah, when looking at the coasters, the Rouse one, when it gets hurt, he just goes all wide-eyed, and I think his tail gets all bushy, and you can kind of make out his eyelashes a little better. And then with the Susie one, it goes from angry eyes to big, wide, goofy eyes, and its mouth actually opens, which is kind of disturbing. But that's it. Birdley's one you can see pretty clearly in the fight. It just gets all, it makes a duck face, goofy face. Noelle doesn't actually ever fight, so she doesn't have a damaged version for her cart. Oh, I just noticed Queen's chair has a little crown on the top. So I bet Noelle's thing having a crown is meant to be kind of like hinting at that, which adds further evidence to the whole Queen is the mother figure, Noelle's like the daughter figure, kind of in their dynamic. Noelle? Hi, Susie. How are you? Okay, I guess. Your roller coaster is I like it. Yeah, there's nothing lore related, by the way, with the coasters of Susie and Chris and Rouse. Susie likes flames and purple, and it looks like a big old monster. Rouse is Rouse. Not really anything interesting there. Yours too? Thanks. Okay, this isn't working. Bring in the next guy. Fear not, my beloved Noel. This valiant warrior of brave intelligence will be your knight in glow-in-the-dark armor. You are such a loser, it's insane. Burnley, you asked Burnley to be on your team? I did not ask him. I did not ask him. I did not ask him. It's, again, kind of interesting that it's in parentheses, because we still hear her little voice clip, so it's kind of unclear if this is speaking quietly or thinking. I wouldn't even bring it up if it weren't for the fact that there's parts in the Snowgrave route where it's kind of heavily implied that Noelle thinks things and Chris hears them, and the way it's distinguished that she's thinking instead of speaking is that it's in parentheses. So it's... I'm going to assume if it's in parentheses that it's them thinking it rather than saying it quietly. Because, like, there's other times when Noelle speaks quietly and it just uses small font or, like, really, really small letters. So I'm going to assume that's what speaking quietly looks like. This is thinking. That's Lord Burleigh to you simpletons. And soon, Super Lord Burleigh. The hell does that mean? It means he's a Dragon Ball Z fan. The worst kind of human. Just kidding. That was a joke. I have no damn clue. Just go with it. You see, thanks to our wondrous queen, we will soon rule the world and turn this land of fools into a smartopia. A true scientocracy where the geniuses of the world can bathe freely in pools of fresh fruit and ambrosia. He is the most, like, fake smart person ever. Because, like, the whole idea of, like, a science, like, intelligence-focused society is a thing. Like, that is a theoretical framework for a society to operate around. But he clearly has no idea what he's talking about. So, yeah. No longer held back by protozoans like you. And the key to that is us, Noelle and I. Our power, the light nerd's power. You mean, light nerds? No, Queen said light nerds. I actually did. Birdley, Queen's just manipulating you. That's what she said you'd say to me. That's fun. It's always weird when Rouse interacts with one of the other characters who isn't Chris or Susie, because they do not act like they like Rouse has no bearing on their plot lines. So it's always kind of strange when that happens. Not much lore here. I actually did. Now, Chris, I must admit, I feel pity for you. Unlike Susie, I always saw some potential in you, because they're gamers. Like, they go way back playing, like, Minecraft and stuff. So, like, yeah. And Smash Bros. So, they have that. Join our side, and I might let you scrub our royal toilet, which is a thing. We see it later. Whether you say join or don't join has some different possible results. Let me see if I can't find the different reactions. Okay, yeah. If you say join, Burnley says, "What? Don't say it so incredulously." Well, if you're dead set on proving your inferiority, and then he fights you. Alternatively, if you say, we won't join you, then he'll say what we're about to say, because obviously I'm going to say don't join. But that is another interesting detail, because it's, once again, Chris reacts emotionally or actually has like some inflection in their voice. So even though we can be wanting to say unironically join Bradley, we're not allowed to. But we still get some lore, because it's clear that Chris has zero interest in joining Bradley, and finds the whole idea incredulous, which is interesting. I wonder which parts Chris finds incredulous. I feel like the logic is that Chris finds the fact that the players try to make them join Bradley so ridiculous that they're shocked. And obviously in the regular narrative, they're confused why Azrael would want to join Bradley. So yeah, do not join. Ah, Chris, I suppose I knew you would never amount to much. Well, if you're dead set on proving your inferiority, allow me to assist you. Yeah, he always says, well, if you're dead set on proving your inferiority, and then transitions into the fight. So yeah. Oh, I love this track. I love that you can hear Queen's theme in it at the beginning. Great deal. I guess we'll go ahead and check, and then... Okay, yeah, you can bump. That's the interaction option in this fight. Before we really dive in, let me just see if there's any interesting interactions or dialogue. Okay, yeah, there's nothing super interesting in this fight regarding interesting lore, dialogue. So we'll just focus on getting through it. The only thing really interesting that I've ever noticed was that it's kind of interesting how Burnley refers to his halberd as the holy halberd, because the concept of holiness doesn't come up super often in these games, and when they do, they're kind of interesting. Like, Rouse uses a heal prayer, so does Noel, implying they have some sort of divine affiliation. So it's interesting. Chris, I get why you're getting in my way. You're jealous, aren't you? God, why am I so bad? Bradley sounds Queen. Queen calls it sick. Oh, I forgot about the flavor dialogue. Is that visible in the wiki? Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's mostly just funny nods and memes. Nothing super interesting. The whole gang will attend a bum to Bradley's car. Chris, you're tired of being the class number 3, gazing distantly at Noel and I's fruited figures. It's crazy that I beat Jevel on my first try in Chapter 1. I'm bad. Queen nods. She has earbuds in. She can't hear him. She has AirPods in. So rather than ever studying, you'd enlist Susie to take us down. I like this because it basically emphasizes that Chris is the smartest person probably in town, at least among the students, because even though they don't study, they're only narrowly beaten by 2 giga nerds who actually study. And so if Chris actually tried, they'd probably dominate, which is funny. Gosh, smells like fried chicken. Bump, defend, heal prayer. Chris, you are truly depraved, playing in the mud with the class hellion. Oh, Bradley summons Queen. Queen calls in sick. But Chris, I am a kind and brave hero. If you come to our side, you may be a slightly less distant number 3. Haha, slightly. Oh, God. It's actually kind of hard attack to dodge. Queen is pretending to be on the phone. The whole gang will attempt to bump into Bradley's car. What? My car is breaking? Fools! This is smart smoke. It means my car is getting stronger. Ha! Go ahead. Bump, you barbarians. I'll show you bumper cars as a game of intellect, not skill. Bardley's coaster car thing looks sick. Partake, Chris, the zephyr of punishment. Ah, damn. Alright, let's finish this. Look, Susie, the closest you'll ever get to an A. What a nerd. What? My coaster, it's... What? That's not fair. My queen, save me! Get defeated, villain. Time to find out if Jaru cares enough to go edit out that curse word. Hello, everyone. I have some news updates. You see, this roller coaster, it's not actually finished yet. What does that mean? Pain. Looks like this trash saved us. Upside down Chris, Susie, and Rouse is really funny. Come on. Who's kicking the trash pile now? Ow. Susie, are you alright? It's nothing. Ow. This is another interesting detail because in the unused sprites, there is one of this scene in which Susie actually has red blood on her hand, which is interesting. And in fact, I bet if she had gone back to the light world at this point, her hand would have been, if not bleeding, at least feeling like worse or weakened, similar, because Bradley's arm gets like electrocuted, and that's why his arm doesn't work. But in the light world, it's not electrocuted, it's just not working. It's almost like the spirit of the arm got damaged, and that's why his real arm couldn't work. I bet something similar would happen with Susie, but Rouse heals her, so it doesn't, which is interesting. Sure you don't want me to look? Look at what? Look at what? I'm fine. Whoa, hey, what the heck are you? This is interesting. Also, this shot. Intimate moment. It's interesting because this is very, very reminiscent of the way Azrael looks when he hugs Frisk at the end of Undertale's True Pacifist round, further hammering home that this is connected to Azrael in some major way. Like, it's really not, it's almost undeniable. Also, Susie is clearly very Anthema? Is that a word? Opposed to being hugged or physical intimacy of any kind. And she's healed. Feel better? Feel better after you just came up and... doesn't feel worse, I guess. How did you do that, anyway? That healing thingy. Oh, healing magic? It's simple, Susie. Anyone can do it. Anyone can do it. And she does teach, or Azrael does teach it to her in this chapter. It's just really interesting that Rouse has the same spells and abilities as Lightners and can even teach them. Like, they're transferable powers. Because, like, it's not like you ever see Lancer teaching Susie how to, like, shoot spades, or see Jevil teaching her how to throw scythes, or, you know, like, it doesn't seem like magic is super equivalent between Lightners and Darkners. They seem super personalized. Like, it would be weird if Chris could use Virokuns at magic, you know, or Susie or whatever. But Rouse clearly has access to the same powers as Susie, and specifically Noelle, because she also learns Heal Prayer, which is interesting. Because it adds further evidence to Rouse being a lot more Lightner-esque than Darkner-esque. Yet he's referred to as a Dark World being in his description, and he's clearly similar to Azrael. It's just interesting, because where do monsters get their magic from, you know? And it's like, well, they have magical bodies, and what was it? It was it because they have magical bodies that they could use magic? Was that the lore in Undertale? Let me check. Okay, yeah, just checking. Yeah, so yeah, monsters can use magic because their bodies are made of magic. It seems to be the implication, and that makes their bodies attuned to their soul, which is also why they're so weak, because that means the fluctuations of their emotions and moods and attitude can physically alter their biology, and specifically make them less physically potent, which is interesting. It also suggests that it's not the soul that lets monsters use magic, because monster souls are described as being weaker than human souls. So humans, if it was all about souls, humans would have magic too. But the implication seems to be that humans, on general principle, don't have magic, whereas monsters pretty much all do, which seems to tie into them having magical bodies. And what do their bodies turn into when they die? Dust. Dust that can imbue essence, which can create things like Flowey, and probably created Rouse, which is why Rouse has access to Lightner-style magic. It's because he was created from a magical corpse. At least that's my theory. I could even teach you if you're interested. Ask me again when it's like blood explosion magic. Another reference to blood, which, you know, to be fair, in the unused sprite, she's bleeding, so it's an interesting detail. But if you wanted, I guess I could learn it. And you wouldn't, you know, have to annoy me with it anymore. Sure, Susie. Next time we have a break. Let's just go already, Chris. Like, this is another moment where it's like, is she whispering or is she thinking? Both would make sense. Whispering makes more sense, unless she's thinking at Chris and knows that Chris can hear her thoughts. It's a trash bag that looks like an eggplant. You dug through the trash and found a dark candy. Dark candy was added to your storage. You dug through the trash and found trash. Dark candy. Those are the same ones from the first chapter, so I don't think I actually need to look at those. This is a creepy, spooky back alley place. And here's just another pile of garbage with a door on the front. Some broken down cars. I never noticed the broken down cars. And they look like fancy cars too, like similar to Queen's. They're like convertibles or something with like sunroofs. And Spampton is specifically known for Yeah, car salesman. I can't believe I never noticed that detail. How interesting. The door is locked. You can faintly hear in this place the sound of, like, a train, which is presumably from the coaster. It's a trash bag that looks like an eggplant. It's a trash bag that looks like an eggplant. It's an eggplant that looks like a trash bag. Very silly. It's a lone door frame. For some reason, you can't see through it. Which is interesting, because, you know, darkness and all that. What's funny is, I think you get like a variety of different dialogue with Trashy depending on what you do first. Like, because they always chew them out no matter what. But like, what they chew them out about depends on what you've done. Let me pull up the dialogue dump. But yeah, nothing super interesting. It's just like different flavors of like, either they complain about him interrupting an emotional moment, which I think is in reference to the Susie and Ralsei hug thing. But oh yeah, so if you talk to him before you reach this point, he says, did you know about adjusting your inventory? Trash cans like me can hold all sorts of things, just like your storage, if you get more than 12 items. Yeah, not now, dude, says Susie. It was sort of an emotional moment, says Ralsei. Oh, that's okay. But if you instead wait until this part, they'll say, oh yeah, Ralsei just explained it. Although you can only carry 12 items around, your storage will hold any extra items you pick up. You can access it where you check recruits. Enemies you spare get recruited to our town, remember? This, by the way, we check our recruits at save points. Which means Ralsei's aware that we can use save points and aware we can access the recruit menu through our save points. Which is suspicious. Whoa, that seems like pretty useful information. I'm Newbert. Everybody loves me. That's why I live in the trash. And then if we talk to Trashy, let's see, which dialogue do we get? Oh boy, I'm Trashy. Did you know about adjusting your inventory? Trash cans like me can hold all sorts of things. Just like your storage if you get more than 12 items. Yeah, not now, dude. It was sort of an emotional moment. Oh, that's okay. Oh, hell, is that Newbert over there? Really? Where? No time for this guy. That's where I live in the trash. Oh. And that triggers this scene. There's a fork in the path. Chris, it seems like it might be advantageous if we split up. Who do you want to go with? And you don't really get a choice here. Doesn't matter who you check because Susie takes control. It is interesting though because like this is one of the few times you get a choice, quote unquote, and it's once again Ralsei prompting it, adding further evidence to the idea that choice is something Ralsei is really trying to give to Chris. Go with Susie. Hey, why does Chris get to choose all the time? Ralsei, you're going with me. Huh? Chris, Dog cones, which are basically troll cones. You're going to hold a lot more in your storage, you know, but you won't be able to use it during battle. Check it and make sure you have what you need. Is what I wanted to say, but it already got said. I'm Trashy. Don't look sad. You're never alone. You've got Newbert. What an interesting little moment. It's interesting that you can come back here and get slightly different dialogue, but only if you're alone as Chris. Can I actually do anything here? The door is locked. These boxes all have X's on them, potentially implying they're trash or like they were thrown in the recycling bin and like on a PC, and so they've been deleted. So quote unquote, possibly. And if we come over here, Cyber City music. It's so hard to make the Cyber City music. Oh my God, Susie and Ralsei, they're over there. Welcome to the city. But yeah, it's really hard to make this music work in a video because it's both high pitched and high paced, which means it doesn't really fit my rather gradual editing style very well. Bunch of cats that are predominantly purple and yellow, which are colors somewhat associated, well, actually pretty thoroughly associated with Caddy, who's got purple fur and I think yellow eyes. So that's cute. And we know Caddy uses the computer lab because she has a profile. Yeah. Yeah, I think so. I forget which Caddy uses it. I think it's the purple Caddy that uses who gets a room at Queen's Mansion. Although I think this is also probably just meant to be a reference to how cat videos are a big thing on the internet. You have neither fluffy boys nor mean girls with you now. Reluctantly, you are filled with the power from the cat sign. Recruits. Ooh. Yeah, storage. Yeah. It's interesting. The whole getting filled with power. It almost makes it seem like the longer you're in the dark world, the more power you absorb from your environment, which would explain why you get stronger even in between chapters, even if you don't hurt anybody. It's almost like when you hurt them, you're like leeching power from them, which is interesting. It certainly adds further credence to the whole concept of like this place is made of magic, and by tapping into it, you can, or by spending time here, it's like radiation. You're absorbing the magic. I wonder if the monsters in Undertale had more powerful magic because they lived underground. Like, presumably they had magic at all because of their biology, but they have more potent... Maybe they have more potent magic because they live underground? I don't know. It's never mentioned. It's also implied that, like, a child from humanity can body them, so... Yeah, I don't think they get that much stronger, even if they do. Although I am coming around to the possibility that the core in Deltarune was utilizing Dark Fountain-esque science. If not a literal Dark Fountain, then something perhaps similar. Yeah, the whole mechanics of Dark Worlds is still kind of confusing me. Because, on the one hand, I could buy that, like, oh, it's like Final Fantasy VII, and the soul of the planet is what creates magic. And that's why being underground grants you access to determination and saving and loading and stuff like that. However, it's strange because Chris can just stab the ground in the middle of their living room and create a dark fountain. They didn't have to dig down deep. They didn't have to make a geothermal core. It's not even in a mine. They're in their apartment, you know? Like, they're above ground. And they even mention at one point that I think Chris's house is at the top of the town, maybe implying it's at the top of a hill, which would mean it's even further from the core of the earth than it is normally. So, I don't know. It's a little confused. Does that mean dark fountains exist in Undertale, or is that implying that there's something weird going on with the earth in this reality? To the point that it's bursting with magic, that anyone with determination can just stab the ground and create a dark fountain. Which is crazy. The fact that it's not common knowledge is also strange. Maybe it's not possible to create a dark fountain anywhere. Maybe it's only possible in this town. Maybe, because we know there's an underground bunker, and we know that it goes deep enough that it's like underneath the lake. So that could imply that maybe whoever made that bunker, maybe it went deep enough that it like tapped into like the Earth's soul or whatever, and allowed magic to fill the underground there. And because it's so close to the surface, you can tap it and create dark fountains. And maybe the Earth is more like filled to the brim with magic in this reality because monsters aren't magical in the light world. or at least they're not as magical as they were in Undertale. Some interesting possibilities, and I look forward to finding the answers to them as we continue with this series. So, with that, I will be taking a break. I'll be back in another recording session shortly. Alright, and we are back with some more Deltarune lore playthrough. Now, I'm going to go ahead and record, or rather save on this third spot right here, just so that way I have a place to return to if I decide to do Snowgrave. For the purposes of this lore playthrough, since you're probably curious, I will be doing the regular playthrough, like the regular route, the pacifist one, mostly because that's just, oh, it's a dolphin. Bananas. Did you know I was raised in an ADHD household? Anyway, so yeah, doing a regular playthrough for the lore playthrough. However, I will discuss some elements of Snowgrave during this section. Specifically, it's less so the specific nitty-gritty, and more the grander thematic importance of Snowgrave within the context of Deltarune and Undertale. I may still do a bonus episode of the lore playthrough specifically covering Snowgrave, if that's something y'all want to see. But the way I see it, I'm not entirely sure I'll do it, just because a lot of Snowgrave's content has already been kind of discussed in my Spamton videos, especially the stuff with how the dynamic between Chris and Noelle can be read very romantically in the context of all the rings and the Ferris wheels and so on and so forth. It's very much by design, which is fascinating. It's this strange, toxic relationship that is very curious. But I digress. Point is, what Deltarune's lore, or what Snowgrave represents, is interesting and important. I just don't know if it needs its own devoted lore playthrough episode. But, I mean, I'll let you guys tell me what y'all think. Let's see. First time in a while that we've had Chris just by themselves. 3 red lines, 3 yellow lines, and several green lines and dashes? Welcome to Cyber City. Pedestrians need to press the switch to cross traffic. I heard the roller coasters are undergoing maintenance. That's a pain because it's our only form of public transit. You know, people don't always talk to this guy, and I always found that line really funny. Yes, the teacup ride is privately owned. Oh man, only form of public transit is roller coasters, and the teacup rides are privately owned. By who? So, like, whose private teacup rides have we been, like, going on joy rides on? That's a funny concept. Although, it's kind of interesting to see a werewire who's talking. Because, like, you'd think they're being brainwashed or mind-controlled, but this one's talking just fine. Interesting. Perhaps Queen's not as tyrannical as she's kind of portrayed. Oh, is that like you see the shadows below? Are those like, is that like the shadow of what are those called? A cable dish? A satellite dish, that's what it is. I guess those are red, yellow, and green. Which is, they're kind of a pale pastel kind of red, yellow, green. But they are that. How weird is it that, like, it does that? It doesn't do damage, it just teleports us away. Very strange. 1 second. I just remembered. There's something you can do with these doors. You see how there's like doors painted on the backgrounds? One of them you can actually interact with, but only one. I forget which one it is. Jeez. And they grow little feet. Oh my god. I'm trying so little. Oh, you see that? There's Noelle over there. What are we cleaning up for, you ask? We don't know. A parade, perhaps. This is another one of those instances of Chris theoretically asking someone something. What are we... Yeah, we don't know, parade, perhaps, because the streets are being cleaned up because Queen intends to battle us on the streets in her Gigamech. A large event is going to happen in the streets later. We were told to make room for something big. It's interesting how the environment's always glitching out. Makes the whole world feel unstable. $20. $20 dark dollars into your inventory. You can almost catch up with Noelle there. Pop-ups popped up. Unfortunately, I think I've already done everything. Wait, or no, is this the first time I've seen the pop-ups? Wait, I think it is, actually. Yeah, okay, I was thinking of one of the other enemies. Yeah, in this lore playthrough, this is the first time I've seen the pop-ups. I've actually already got, like, a whole video devoted to the lore significance of pop-up. So it might not be entirely necessary to discuss this, but better to be thorough. There's a couple interesting lines. Most of it's gibberish. This application is only supported by OS 2000, so that would seem to imply, yeah, further evidence that this stuff is from, like, the old, like, all this tech, all these computers and programs are from the late 90s, early 2000s, which makes sense. If you do R action with Ralsei, he mentions that he didn't mean to do it. I'm sorry, I repent, which, you know, him repenting is very reminiscent of how Asriel is known to go to the church and beg for forgiveness for Chris's sins. And call me, you know, Jaru, oh, it's late. I can't think of witty commentary, but call me a little too deep in my own theories, but replace this, like, this line of Ralsei's with Chris saying it. I didn't mean to do it. I'm sorry. I repent. Very interesting in the context of the Asriel is dead theory. With the click action, you can actually get some interesting dialogue relevant to Chris. Well, first we'll check. A rubbery mascot star for attention. Click it and... Click here, click here, click here. This application is only supported by OS 2000s. Easy peasy. Famously, the Everyman appears in one of those ads, which is interesting because we've never actually seen the Everyman anywhere except in the True Lab in Undertale as an attack of one of the amalgamates, as graffiti in the light world of Deltarune, and as, I think, appearing in the pop-up ads. Also, one hidden Everyman head is found in the Spampton Neo fight. So, like, he appears mostly in just sort of, I don't know, he's a bit of a mysterious character. Almost a cryptid or an urban legend. Now, if we click on pop-up, you unconsciously clicked on a pop-up about monsters for humans in your area. Now, this is one of the most interesting, I mean, there's several, but this is one of the very interesting pop-up flavor texts we can get. Because the fact that there's ads in the late 90s, early 2000s for monsters for humans in your area, this is blatantly a dating app reference, which suggests that, and typically these, you know, cringe, like, suspect ads, the, like, X for, you know, lonely bachelors in your area type ads, they're usually some, like, I don't know, some subcategory of people who you might be interested in. It's very fetishized, but the point I'm getting to is that this is suggesting that not only are monsters and humans living together in this reality, but they are coexisting well enough that the idea of them dating is on the table. And in fact, there's even sketchy ads referencing that fact. So now, whether monsters and humans are compatible, compatible? Yeah, compatible, enough to, say, have children is a totally different question. I know that, like, one fan theory is that Susie's half human, which is interesting. A fun idea, for sure. But whether they can procreate and whether or not they're just, normal people, or excuse me, whether or not their relationships are limited to just, romance without, procreation, is unclear. But the point stands that this kind of proves that at least in the late 90s, early 2000s, humans and monsters were living side by side, and we're positive enough towards each other to have romantic relationships, which means that this is a drastically different reality from Deltarune. Sorry, from Undertale, where the humans and monsters were at each other's throats. So, yeah, this is a fascinating detail. Also, there's the incredibly amusing and interesting detail that Chris is the one who unconsciously clicks on a pop-up about monsters for humans, implying that Chris themselves is perhaps interested in a monster or two or more. Throw that on the shipping fodder pile for Chris having a romantic interest in Susie, which has a surprising amount of evidence in this chapter specifically. Huh? That made another one. Preening its weird rubbery flesh. Let's see. Block. Block 10 ads. Happy. Man, I love pop-up. They're so cute. Popping with joy. Oh, and those birds, you could argue that they kind of look like they have everyman type heads. It's a little unclear though. I wonder if everyman is a bird type monster or something. Like, I don't know, maybe he's related to Birdly. That'd be interesting. Yeah. You unconsciously clicked on a pop-up about demon summoning classes for teens. Very interesting for Chris to be interested in demon summoning. Now, whether you can actually summon demons in this reality, or whether or not this is like some fake ad that's like a total scam. Like, I suspect, like, most of these ads are implied to be kind of fake. They're clickbait, But whether or not this is implying that demon summoning is a legitimate thing in the world of Deltarune, or if this is like some scam, but Chris is just secretly interested in demon summoning, then that's also quite interesting. I mean, regardless of whether demon summoning is a legitimate practice in this universe, the fact that Chris is interested in it at all is fascinating. Because there's only a couple reasons you'd ever want to summon a demon. And most of them involve making a deal with that demon so as to achieve something. Usually something that you desperately desire because you've lost something precious. In short, I think this is most certainly further evidence for Chris killing Azrael, or at least being responsible for Azrael's death. So, yeah, very interesting detail. And it also plays into the fact that we know Chris and Caddy studied occult magic together, or studied the occult. And again, we have no proof that magic actually exists in the Deltarune light world, but the fact that they were studying it adds further credence to this line of investigation on Chris's part. I made another one. Yeah, unfortunately I could not get... Oh, I just realized. I was kind of like just respawning pop-up in order to... in order to try and get more flavor text, but I couldn't get any more, and I was running out of health. But more importantly, I accidentally defeated, or spared, I should say, like a dozen pop-ups in that fight, so I got like 700 dark dollars. That's crazy. It's ridiculously easy to grind for money in this game. The remaining line that I couldn't quite get to spawn was, you unconsciously clicked on an ad for a video about making knives out of spaghetti. Later on in this chapter, we also find evidence of Chris looking up something involving Jell-O knives. So there's multiple instances of Chris in the context of food wanting to make knives out of said food. Now, the logic exactly behind that is unclear. Whether it's just a weird interest in knives, or whether it's actually like has some lore relevance. Like maybe Chris thinks that if you create a dark fountain using a knife that was created from food, it'll have special properties. But the evidence, in my opinion, implies that Chris didn't know about how to create dark fountains until this chapter, when Queen explains it to them. So, since I'm not a Knight Chris truther, I don't really think Chris knew about it until now. So I don't think the knives made out of spaghetti or the knives made out of Jell-O are referencing specifically that. As for the rest of the pop-up flavor text, Susie stuff, I'll throw it on screen. It's not super interesting. Flaming eggplant holding a chainsaw, clicking on a word processor and giving it a virus somehow. Clicking on a picture of a steak. It's just mostly reinforcing things we already know. Susie likes violence. Susie is not very good with technology because she's a bit of a big heart, small brain kind of character. Jockington's a big heart, small brain. Susie's just sort of oblivious. She doesn't try very hard at life, so she's probably smarter than she thinks she is, but I digress. And then, of course, clicking on a picture of steak just further reinforces the idea that Susie comes from a home life where she's not really fed, or at least not given much food. Abusive home life. And then, of course, Rousey acts... notably, the difference between Rousey and Chris is that Chris unconsciously clicks on a pop-up, which is interesting in the context of Chris being, possessed. So it kind of raises the question of, are they clicking on a pop-up ad because Chris is kind of in the subconscious, since they're not the one in the control, and so the ads are the ones Chris wants to click on? Or is it whoever's possessing them choosing which ads to click on? Both are possible interpretations. I think it's meant to be that Chris is the one clicking, just because the Jell-O knife, the spaghetti knife thing, it just seems to be in line with them. Also, monsters for humans. That means that the target demographic of the ad is a human. So, yeah, I think Chris is the one in control there, or at least the one being targeted by the ads. Rousey, however, instead of unconsciously, accidentally. However, even regardless of whether he clicks on it by design or not, they're still targeted ads, which means they're based off of his interests. So with Rousey, his ads are, he accidentally clicked on an ad for lighteners for darkeners in your area and was mortified. So that's a kind of flip on what Chris was looking at. It also further implies that Rousey is a darkener, even though he has so many lightener properties. It also implies he's romantically interested in lighteners. And then he deleted the browser shortcut on the desktop entirely, but immediately felt guilty about it because he thought he had deleted the entire internet. Further implying a weird dichotomy with Rousey, where he knows way more about tech than he should, but is still ignorant enough about tech to naively think he could delete the internet. So, yeah, the fact that it's all about, he felt mortified, he felt guilty, this is all very Azrael-esque, so it's interesting. Another one, Rousey moved to click on an ad with a bunny, teaching you how to make friends, and accidentally clicked on an ad of a machine gun that appeared over it. The idea of Rousey wanting to just make friends and be a fluffy little bunny, and then getting accidentally lured into a, kill everyone route is kind of the subtext I read into that. Or basically the idea that, he means well, but he could accidentally lead to a great deal of violence and death through his actions. And then Rouse tried to click on an ad with a castle on it, but it was actually an ad for a company that demolishes buildings with bazookas. Again, further emphasizing that Rouse is capable of potentially causing great harm unintentionally. Which I think this is actually pretty solid evidence against the idea of Rouse being a villain. I think it kind of implies that he's doing his best. I think he's a good little lad, and he's just perhaps doing things that are more harmful than he realizes in the name of the greater good. So yeah. Oh, and then as for Noelle, she can click on the ads. She can misclick on a link to buy How to Draw Dragons, which in and of itself is both a reference to the book in Chris's house, which was borrowed by Azriel, and thus implies that Azriel is interested in pretty dragon ladies, and which makes sense for Noelle to also be interested in this, since she also is interested in purple dragon ladies. In fact, I actually used this as evidence in one of my videos not in one of my videos, in my lore playthrough. The fact that Noelle is being targeted with How to Draw Dragons, which has a purple dinosaur-like dragon creature woman on the front cover, while she's blatantly interested in Susie, is kind of funny and kind of interesting, and could potentially hint that maybe Susie's some sort of dragon monster, which is a fun idea. What's funny is that with the How to Draw Dragons, that's the only misclick. With her others, she just straight up clicks on it, like it's fully intentional, and they are a link for hot female Santas in your area, which is so funny. Like, Chris clicks on a Monsters for Humans in your area ad, or else clicks on a Lightners for Darkners ad, and Noelle clicks on a hot female Santas ad. Like, what? What? How are you this obsessed, so obsessed with Christmas that they're at... I mean, I think that's the joke, is that even when they don't have anything to target for you regarding your romantic interests, they'll still shoehorn in your other hobbies, namely Noelle loves Christmas, and so it shoved Christmas into her blank, hot blanks in your area ad. So yeah, I find it dubious if Noelle is actually interested in hot female Santas, but she's also clearly into women, so it's also entirely on the table that she's interested in hot female Santas, especially considering she clicked on this link rather than misclicking it. Okay, yeah, I've talked myself back around. I think she's just interested in hot female Santas. Noelle has interesting tastes. Noelle can also click on a link for a creepy game glitch compilation, which is also quite interesting. Oh, yeah, and something regarding Pop-Up's gibberish is that it's actually butchered Japanese, is what Pop-Up's saying, and it can say a name of a Mega Man boss, kind of butchered, called God Karma Machine O Inari, and it says a butchered version of that. It can also say the equivalent of Happy Birthday, or Let's Play / Hangout. Another one means I am sleepy, and another one just means happy. Which, this is further evidence of a version of Japan existing in the Deltarune and Undertale worlds, which adds further evidence to the idea that this is Earth. This is our Earth. It's just an alternate version of it, which makes sense since this planet is always referred to as Earth in both games. They don't give it its own unique name. It's just the Earth. So, it's interesting. Yeah. Most of the details regarding the pop-ups are just kind of neat little references to, like, Fin, on Tio, the Magic Planet, which is a kind of Tamagotchi type game. It also references various types of ads and Trojans and viruses and stuff. They have a line about wanting its tongue to be pressed in so it doesn't feel hungry anymore, which is likely a reference to Furbies. And both Birdly and Pop-Up have lines referencing them preening, which could potentially add further evidence to Everyman and Birdly being connected in some way. However, I do believe that's it from pop-ups. However, there is one interesting detail, though, that I wish to discuss because it's kind of relevant to this whole section. I'm not going to be discussing Snowgrave's specifics, but I do wish to discuss some of the nitty-gritty, interesting lore ramifications of Snowgrave, specifically with regards to glitchy game compilation, like glitchy games. Noel is repeatedly emphasized to be very interested in and involved with video game glitches, especially in the Spamton Sweepstakes, where like there's whole portions of the ARG devoted to her interest in spooky, creepy game glitches. And what's interesting about that is the fact that, well, what route is most associated with Noel? Snowgrave, aka the weird route. And how do you achieve the weird route? Well, you do it by freezing enemies. It's effectively a retrain or reimagining of the No Mercy route from Undertale. The No Mercy route, you defeat enemies, you kill enemies, you get stronger. Kind of the same deal in Snowgrave. And it's very much given the same creepy connotations, complete with the music in areas slowing down to emphasize, which is very similar to what happens in the No Mercy route in Undertale. And the reason that's also interesting is because it's important to remember the difference in theme between Undertale and Deltarune. Undertale is about your relationship with games that let you do anything. It's about games that put you in the position of a god, where you have an absurd amount, even an obscene amount of influence over how the world develops. Think Baldur's Gate. It's like RPGs where you get to decide how the world develops. That is what Undertale is, and that's what its theme is focused on exploring, and also what its meta commentary is on, but that's another can of worms. Point is, that's what that game's about. So the No Mercy route is important in that game for expressing how it is the kind of promise of the game. Like, oh, you don't have to kill anybody, and you can get the best ending by not killing anybody. But you can also go the opposite direction. And in order to fulfill that promise of you have insane amounts of control over this reality, they had to make the No Mercy route as, fleshed out and impactful as they could. They had to make it its own legitimate route that has fascinating lore and content, hidden within, in order to deliver on the idea of a game that is commentating on the idea of, RPGs with an incredible amount of open-endedness, with your ability to influence the world. In other words, it's a game about your choices mattering an obscene amount and what are the consequences of that. Deltarune, however, is the opposite. This game, and its meta commentary and its themes, I should say, are all about discussing our relationship with video games, where it railroads us, where we don't get to choose one of a dozen different endings, where we don't get to drastically alter the game world. Instead, it's commenting on games where we are railroaded towards a specific outcome. In other words, it's about games where our choices don't matter. No matter what you do, no matter what choices you make, it will always lead to the same inevitable outcome. Yeah, so it always leads to the same outcome. So, you can try and play a game differently. I can use violence to get all the way through this game, or I can use pacifism to get all the way through this game. However, in both cases, you will always still end up at the same endpoint in both chapters. And I suspect that'll be the case for the whole game. Even if our choices start having mounting levels of ramifications over the course of the chapters, to the point that we can end up drastically changing the nature of the Deltarune world, I suspect by the end, the ending will still be the same. I think that, I'm of the proponent that it's a time loop, and so the timeline will reset no matter what we do. However, regardless of what the ending is, I am confident that it will be the same ending no matter what choices we make. And that's important. Just as it was important for the No Mercy route to have, to be just as valid a route as the pacifist route, in order to fulfill that promise of your choices mattering, this game needs to make sure that all of its routes don't matter, where your choices do not matter in the end, because that's what it's promised. It's promised one ending. And so it has to deliver on that idea. However, what's interesting is that puts the No Mercy route in a curious place, because it's giving us the tools that we had in Undertale, but basically promising us that those tools have been neutered they are no longer as they no longer work the way they did in Undertale. We can no longer get drastically different endings as a result of our actions. And the reason that's fascinating is because it puts the No Mercy route in a very unique spot, where, as in Undertale, it represented how, oh, you can play a game however you want and drastically change the outcome. For example, using Baldur's Gate 3 as an example, you can play through that game and kill everybody if you want to, and you will get different kinds of endings as a result of that choice. Your actions have consequences, and thus you can get that kind of ending. You can also get a happy ending where everyone gets saved and everything's cool and peachy, and a bunch of other endings besides. But the point is that's the kind of game Undertale is. That's the kind of game that Undertale's commenting on. And yet, unlike Undertale, unlike Baldur's Gate, Deltarune doesn't have different endings. So, sorry, this is unscripted, so I'm a little rambly. But I guess what I'm saying is, in Undertale, the No Mercy route represented the way players can play like super violently or super like min-maxy, or just sort of treat the game as a series of codes and numbers where you're just trying to min-max and do well and not really caring about character or themes or story, and are more so focusing on, min-maxing. And it's a whole different like commentary on a type of playstyle, a type of ending, a type of way of approaching a game. And that's cool and all. However, because Deltarune is commenting on a totally different type of game, that means that the No Mercy route, aka the weird route, ends up in a very kind of interesting spot. It represents something very different in this game, in my opinion. And I think that's why it's called the weird route, is because it's in a weird spot. And also because I think it represents those glitches that we were just reading about, specifically the ones Noelle is so interested in. I think that the point of the weird route, the point of the equivalent of the No Mercy route in Deltarune, is that it will represent players who like to break games. I'm talking about the speedrunners. I'm talking about the glitch hunters. I'm talking about anyone who likes to glitch out of bounds and backwards long jump their way to the end of the level and defeat Bowser with 0 stars. Like, that is the kind of gameplay and play style that I think the weird route represents in this game. It's about breaking something. Because a lot of those games with really famous glitches and speedrun tech and all that kind of stuff, a lot of those games are rather famously linear. Super Mario 64 is the speedrun game, up there with Ocarina of Time. Those are the big, glitchy speedrun games that people are famous for. And Noelle plays RPGs similar to stuff like The Legend of Zelda or Final Fantasy, both of which have pretty prominent glitches within, and speedrun tech. But what's interesting is that it's a totally different kind of player that's being represented there. The player who min-maxes and who defeats every enemy in order to get as strong as possible to max out the stats, that's a different kind of player than the player who wants to hunt for glitches, who wants to break an otherwise linear game, the kind of person who wants to skip ahead, find ways to skip to Chapter 2 or Chapter 3 from Chapter 1. That kind of player. And that's fun on a meta-commentary level, but it also means that the weird route has to represent something very different in this game. It's basically the player's way of rejecting the idea of there only being one ending. And it's our way of saying, okay, if we can't have one ending by playing by the normal rules, or we can't have a special ending by playing by the normal rules, what if we break the game? What if we cheat? What if we hack? What if we use glitches and exploits in order to break through break through reality in order to find our way to something new, something different, something special? And much like how you can glitch out of bound to find things that were never meant to be seen in other games, I bet that the weird route's going to be about finding things that you wouldn't normally be able to find, seeing characters and rooms and lore that you wouldn't be able to find otherwise. And I think it'll be very interesting. However, I think it will ultimately, while being very interesting for lore, still end the same way. Because no matter how glitchy a game gets, no matter how bugged it is, no matter what exploits gamers find, you cannot exploit your way to a different ending. Super Mario 64 will always end with Mario flying out of the castle with the wing cap and rescuing Princess Peach. Legend of Zelda will always end with you killing Ganon. Like, there's nothing you can do to change the ending. And that's simply the way most games work. And I think that Weird Route won't change that. I think it'll be interesting, and I think it'll represent our efforts to sort of cheat the system. But I don't think this. I think the house always wins. Is my kind of 2 cents there. So, yeah, just thought I'd throw that bit out there. I won't have much more to say about Snowgrave in this lore playthrough, just because Snowgrave kind of takes up, like, it kind of replaces a lot of lore that you would normally get with different lore. And while that's cool and all, this lore playthrough is going to be focused on the main lore that everyone's seen and everyone's experienced, because not everyone knows about Weird Route. Not everybody's seen it. Not everyone's played it. Some people are just, they only play the regular route. So, and that's kind of what I want to focus on today. All right, so yeah, that's enough time spent in this alleyway rambling. Hopefully in editing I chopped it up a little bit more concisely. But yeah, so. Chris, what are you? Oh, Noelle, sweetie. Don't let her find me. Noelle, sweetie, darling, honey, where are you? Further cases of, like, using these, like, sweetie, darling, honey, like, very motherly. Very much something that, like, a mother figure would use. We're a team now, remember? You still have to be my willing minion. Chris, it appears our comrades have pressed the escape key on us. So it has come to this. In order to find our teams, we must form an uneasy truce. I love, by the way, the dynamic between Chris and the Queen in this chapter. I think it's really interesting and cute. Queen, my splendid Queen, where are you? Look at Queen's face. She looks like that one painting with the screaming farmers. Oh no, don't let him find me. Her eyes become the @ sign. That's funny. Noelle. Ah, Chris. Not the life form I was looking for. Where's the rest of the C+ squad? Don't tell me you got abandoned. Ha! Ha ha ha! That's what you get for trusting Susie. Ha ha! Noelle? Queen? They're just busy retro gaming somewhere. Oh, that's interesting. Is it implying that Chris said something about Noelle and Queen not being here? Or is this Burnley projecting and assuming that's what Chris was thinking? I bet they're waiting for me on the player select screen, listening to strangely groovy music. Ha 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 ha! This is probably a reference to Marvel vs. Capcom, I want to say 2, which had famously groovy music on the character select screen. Sad Burnley. Sigh. So it's come to this. In order to find our respective teams, it appears we must form an uneasy truce. What the? Who the beep said you could double truces? God, this game's so funny. Huh? Did you hear something? Honk honk! No, it's just the sounds of the city. Oh, okay. God, everyone's so dumb. Well, I'll be ahead. Don't be late. Chris, as part of our truce, the better one, Keep distracting Birdly and find Noelle. For you see, Birdly, he's... Okay, there's nothing wrong with him. He's just annoying. I like how she like pauses dramatically, like she's gonna reveal some dark truth about Birdly, like he's my son or he's a serial killer. It's like, oh no, he's just annoying. Toodles. Chris, if it's okay, got any room for another truce? You need to say of course or no triple truces. Let me just double check and see what the different dialogue results are. Okay, yeah, nothing too fancy with the different options. If you say yes, she says thanks, Chris. And if you say no triple truces, she says har har, very funny. Well, I'd rather take my chances with you than her. But we'll be nice, of course. I mean, it's definitely in Chris's character to say no triple truces, but we'll go, of course. Thanks, Chris. Noelle joined the party with a pleasant little jingle. And that brings us to this save point. Noelle has joined your party. You are filled with the power of not knowing what a sugar plum is. What is a sugar plum? A piece of dragée or hard candy made of hardened sugar in a small round or oval shape. Plum in the name of this confection does not always mean plum in the sense of the fruit or the fruit of the same name, but commonly refers to the small size and spherical or oval shape. So there's some sort of weird little candy, and they're not referencing actual plums at all. Duly noted. First alleyway. It's interesting that it's called the first alleyway. Like the first alleyway where you have Noelle on your team? Interesting. All right, I think I'll stop the recording for now. That was a bit of a short little stint, but I take breaks between chapters, or between save points, so might as well. And I did ramble for a long time about Snowgrave, so I'll be back with another recording session later. One moment. Stop recording.